Hi, my name is Amanda Saunders, and I'm a 24-year-old university student from Grand Falls, Windsor, Newfoundland and Labrador. In April 2018, when I was finishing my third year of my psychology degree, I noticed some really troubling and debilitating symptoms that I've never ever experienced before. I was very fatigued all of the time. I would sleep between 14 and 17 hours a day. I was just so weak and lethargic. I couldn't walk very far, maybe like 5 to 10 feet without needing to stop. I couldn't sleep flat on pillows anymore. I would sleep truthfully on a 90-degree angle. And so I just attributed it at first for studying so hard, not really being as active as I once was, and that was nothing else to think about. But that quickly changed. About a couple of weeks later, I couldn't breathe that well. And so my father urged me to go to my local emergency room and just figure out what was going on. And so I went in, had an x-ray done, and they said that my heart was really, really big. And they'd never seen a heart that size before. And the ER physician was telling me, it's impossible, Amanda, for your heart to be that big at your age. But we'll wait to see what the cardiologist said the next day. So I overnighted in my local emerge, and the cardiologist came to see me the next day and diagnosed me with dilated cardiomyopathy. Dilated cardiomyopathy is a big fancy term for saying that it's an enlarged heart and it will eventually fail on you. And that is exactly what ended up happening to me. It was a matter of months until I hit end-stage heart failure. I was given medications galore. I wasn't able to eat anymore because I was retaining so much fluid in my stomach and my legs that food wasn't an option for me anymore. And I had a cardiac device implanted into me to act as my heart. And I was one of the youngest people in Newfoundland and Labrador to have one of these devices in. And so after a few months of those changes, nothing really worked. Now I ended up going back to school for my 4th year and final year, or so I thought, of my degree, but I withdrew from school 6 weeks later. And because I couldn't be on my own anymore, I was really miserable. And my cardiologist contacted those in the heart failure team in St. John's, Newfoundland, Labrador. And during that appointment, I was told that a heart transplant was the only way for me to survive and to ever dream of having a future. So I waited 16 days in order to be medevaced to Ottawa, Ontario. And that 3rd day I was in the hospital, my cardiologist came back to me and said, Newfoundland and Labrador can't help him anymore. We exhausted all of our options and there's nothing that this province can do for you. So I sent to the Ottawa Heart Institute in Ottawa for my transplant assessment. This took 8 days. It usually takes about 1 week to 1 month. And so I was in a procedure room. I did what is called a right heart catheterization. So they put a catheter into my neck and test the pressures of my heart to see how well my heart is actually working. And as soon as they put the catheter in, I turned blue. My blood pressure dropped to the 60s, my oxygen levels dropped, and I was immediately listed in that procedure room. I was at a stage 3.5 out of 4, which means that I was near the top of the list and a heart transplant needed to happen as soon as possible. So 7 weeks later, I got the much awaited call that a suitable donor heart became available. And I remember this day vividly. My parents were with me, and a nurse came into my room and said, Amanda, stop eating and drinking. And I was so confused. I didn't think that this was the news. I thought I was going for another procedure. And I said to my nurse, what are you talking about? And she said, a donor heart became available and you're going into surgery the next day. And I looked at both of my parents and they were all in tears. The whole hospital floor that I was staying on was in tears, of pure joy and excitement. And also, that they were sad too on the other end of it because I did have to rely on a deceased donor in order to live. So we did some grieving for that as well. But it was just like Canada Day at the hospital that day. So the surgery itself was a major success. It was textbook from what I was told. But I hit a really scary obstacle after my transplant. I was gonna end up being in a coma for 4 days because half of my heart didn't work. And so I was put in this coma for some extra healing time and extra sleep. And where my heart didn't work, my kidneys stopped working as well. So I had to be put on some dialysis. I needed blood products galore. And I woke up, like I said, 4 days later, and I felt an immediate difference. I had this new energy I've never, ever, ever had before in my entire life. And I was just so ready to live life again with my brand new heart and never look back and think twice. So it still baffles me to this day how much my life has changed because of my heart transplant for the better. And so I spent another few months in Ottawa recovering. I had to go to cardiac rehabilitation for a few months and that kind of thing, and just get used to my new immunosuppressants medications so my body doesn't recognize my new heart as not my own. And so recovery was great. I was able to return back to school 7 months after transplant, and I was just living my best life. Unfortunately, 14 months after my heart transplant, I was diagnosed with post-transplant lymphoproliferative disorder, or PTLD for short, which means that as a result of my heart transplant and virus that became active into me, I had blood cancer. My blood cancer experience is very unique because my cancer ended up growing backwards. So usually it infects the lymphatic system first and then goes into your stomach and your lungs. Mine did the opposite. So my blood cancer originated in my GI tract and then it started to spread elsewhere. After returning back to my transplant center multiple times because I was so miserable, it took a really long time to diagnose, and because also this cancer only happens in 1 to 2% of transplant recipients, it wasn't even on the radar for quite some time. And so I was diagnosed with the cancer 2 days before my 23rd birthday. And my cardiologist came in and sat on my hospital bed and said, "I know what's wrong with you, Amanda." And both my parents were with me as well. And they said, "We found cancer in your GI tract and your colon, and you're going to start cancer treatments within the next week or so." And I looked to the left at my mom, I looked to the left at my dad, and I was devastated, to say the least. When I had my heart transplant, my whole world stopped. I had no sense of self anymore. I didn't know anything. I didn't know what was going to happen. I had no direction in my life because I thought that was the end for me. Those same feelings and those same emotions came back when I was diagnosed with lymphoma, that I was just scared and terrified, and I didn't know if I could do it at all again. But luckily, I did have some amazing supports with me that really stuck by me, and they still do to this day. But the cancer, I think, was even harder than the heart transplant was, 100%. So I did some cancer treatments in Ottawa first because there was a risk of me going into organ rejection. Thank goodness that didn't happen, and I hit complete remission 3 months and 3 days after I was diagnosed with cancer. But as a precautionary measure, I had to do a second round of cancer treatment to make sure that the cancer was gone for good, hopefully never to come back again. And I was able to go back to school somewhat when I was diagnosed with cancer and going through treatment. I did my major research project. I did a psychology degree first, and I just did my big research project in cancer treatment. I would bring my computer in with me, research away, do as much schoolwork as I can. I just wanted to have my sense of normalcy back, and I really, really wanted to continue with my education because education is something that I really, really cherish and privilege immensely. And yeah, I did it all. I'm not going to sit here and say it was easy because that's far from the truth, but I just didn't want to feel sick anymore. I wanted to live my life again like I was intended to with my new heart. And luckily, I was able to graduate with my psychology degree this spring in 2021. But that's not the end. I'm currently in the Bachelor of Social Work program at the Royal University of Newfoundland. I was continually inspired by those around me, like patients that I met along the way, social workers I met along the way, other supports I met along the way, that were doing so much for me that I wanted to pay it forward for future patients that could be going through, let's say, a heart transplant or a cancer diagnosis or diabetes, because I also had diabetes as well from my heart transplant. And I just wanted to pay it forward and be there for those people and be a strong advocate for them, because that's what they need, is that support. And I couldn't have thought of a better job or career, I should say, than social work. And I'm very grateful that I was able to be admitted to the program and loving it so far. Perseverance was very, very difficult for me to continue with while I was so sick. But drawing back to what I said earlier, I just wanted a normal or so-called normal life, and I would have done anything I could to maintain that sense of normalcy. And that's why I stuck it out, and it paid off. I always say to people that your obstacles are just a rock in your path and not the final destination. That was repeated to me multiple times while I was going through my illnesses. And that really, really stuck out with me. That, it's just a bump in the road, it's just a big boulder, and that you will overcome it and you will surpass it and you will thrive on that. I cannot even begin to thank McGillivray Law for choosing me as the recipient of this year's scholarship. By winning this scholarship, it'll continue to fuel my dream of going into social work and pursuing social work and be a beacon of light for those that may have went through similar health challenges as I am. So thank you, McGillivray, from the bottom of my new heart.